Welcome to 222 Paranormal Podcast. Coming to you from two locations today. Jen is at home because
Yep.
we had a bit of a snowstorm and it's a mess out there. So she's calling in. So welcome
Hi,
to the
everybody.
show, Jen.
Well, thanks for having me on my own show. It's the Super Siblings coming to you from two separate studios. I am in the haunted house right now. There's the haunted kitchen. I'm kind of tucked away in a corner here. In case any paranormal activity happens, you won't be able to see it on camera. Maybe I'll take everybody on a tour of the house when we're done here.
Oh, okay. I was interviewed on a show a couple of nights ago, and they asked about you and asked it, well, does Jen into the paranormal as much as you? I'm like, she's into a heck of a lot more than I am. She lives in the house. It's haunted.
Yeah. Do you remember last week when we were, or the last time I was taping from home, and all of a sudden I went like that?
Yeah.
There was this big noise in the kitchen behind me, and it just scared me. I was like,
I didn't hear it.
I don't know if you guys caught that. And like my heart was like racing. It was crazy.
We went to, not me and you, but I'm telling the listener that I went to a house with one of our friends that the guy was having troubles. They've investigated this house before. He was having some issues. So he wanted, someone to come in and cleanse the house. So the team, and I don't want to mention the team because they are not going to release any information about this. They just did it privately.
Mm-hmm.
But I got a chance to go with them. And we went in the house, and the guy had mirrors everywhere, but they were all on the floor.
What?
Yeah, old mirrors. Like
on the
20
floor?
of them. Yeah, nothing was hung up on the walls. He had some Harley Davidson stuff up on the walls and stuff like that, but none of the mirrors were on the walls. And he said he was having issues. So we were in the house, and the two girls I was with were upstairs cleansing the house, going through sage and all that. And we heard footsteps so loud.
Wow.
And I had a camera going downstairs. And I've never heard footsteps this loud. So we were thinking that the guy that owns the place came back because, he left. But we looked out in the garage. He wasn't in the garage. We, looked downstairs. Nobody was downstairs, but we heard it. So I checked my camera footage. Everything recorded that night except when I turned the camera on in that room. It keeps saying that the file's corrupt. So the person
that happened to you before, though, when you had some activity.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So is it paranormal or what? Now, the last time they were in that house, they said that one of the heaters, because the building's so old that they have new heaters in the fireplaces, like gas heaters in front of the fireplaces.
Oh, okay.
And these are marble
whites.
These are marble fireplaces. And it's like, man, why didn't you actually put the heater in there so it looks better? But the guys that investigated before said that when that one heater kicked on, it sounded like footsteps. But we went downstairs and the heater was shut off.
Oh, that's cool.
So the footsteps we heard, I bet you was probably demons. But so we're going to try to get the video to work, but I hope I captured it because
that would be amazing.
So loud. Yeah.
Was there any other type of activity that happened there?
Yeah, the two girls that we were with that was cleansing the house was up in a bedroom, and they said there was a woman looking out the window and a man in the room that was keeping her in the room.
Oh, wow.
And this house had...
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, did you know any of the history of the house?
No, not at all. And I didn't want to know any history because we weren't doing an investigation. They just wanted to go in there and do some saging and stuff.
Okay.
But we were the only people in the house, and we heard those footsteps. And she said that there was a man in that room keeping the woman from leaving.
Wow.
And she
That's
kind
scary.
of did her thing and tried to banish him from the room or something. I don't know what they do, you know. But they did sage the whole building, and it's an old building, and it's a weird setup because in one of the rooms was used to be a bar, so it's like 2-story, and there's a balcony, and in the balconies there's little tiny rooms where the ladies would take the guests, and
Oh, like
they must
the
have been like,
evening.
well, I think what they were like life coaches and took them in the room and talked to them, you know, and
okay.
yeah.
Right? I don't believe that for a minute.
So yeah, that was really interesting because I've never heard footsteps that loud, and
Yeah.
we all were like, he's got to be in the house, but there was nobody in that hallway. So I was talking to the people that investigate there, and he said that if they ever investigate the house again, they're going to put up cameras everywhere. And I suggested they put up cameras and leave and go have dinner,
Yeah.
sort of like what Miranda does. They leave and let those cameras run, knowing that no one's in that house.
Right.
So
I think the spirits would be more inclined to do their normal thing when nobody's there.
yeah,
We normally do. But, you know, having somebody there could also spark the activity.
yeah.
That's cool. Now, how old was that building?
It's real old. It's like 1800.
Okay. So
It's
lots of
big.
activity in and out for years, right?
Yeah, it was an inn, they called it. So I don't know if it was a bar inn or a hotel inn, but it
Probably
did have that
both.
bar in there. Yeah.
Interesting.
So
Huh.
real interesting. I'm going to get the info from the people that was there with, and he said he's going to give me all the information on the place, and it seems pretty crazy. So that was my paranormal activity for this week.
Awesome.
But other than that, not much happened. I'm keeping
I have
stuff
one
done here. I did the Year of Prophet podcast and pushed my book, The 14-Day
Yes.
Affirmation Transformation. The link is in the show notes. Pick it up. It will change your life.
There you go.
And I mentioned about how you sell high-end clothing at super low prices. So the link is in the description. Click on the link below. You'll go right to that. So Jen can buy more wine.
I need gallons. No, I'm kidding.
So,
I had
anyways,
weird
what's
happen.
that?
Can I share
What
my
happened?
weirdness this week?
Yeah.
So this is really strange. I woke up at like 3:45 in the morning, 2:45 or 3:45. I can't remember, but at 45. And I was sleeping, but I woke up and this weird rush of energy came across the room over my bed, and it was almost like a cloud is all I could describe it. A cloud of energy. And it came and it went over where I was laying and then went to the other side and was gone. But my adrenaline was pumping, like, remember when you saw that ghost in the Black Cross?
Yes.
It was like that. Like it was like 15 or 20 minutes before my heart rate went down. It was so freaky, and it had a little bit of a sound to it, kind of like a rumble of thunder almost, but like really, really, really quiet. So I don't know. I was like, I know I wasn't dreaming because I was awake because it woke me up. And then I was like, that was the weirdest thing. So I can't explain it.
Was there any smells?
No, it was not a fart.
No, because I was talking to somebody and they said that they had something like that happen and they had the smell of ozone.
Oh.
Ozone is the smell like when you short out a wire and that spark and the smoke comes up, like an ozone smell.
No, there was no smell. It was weird.
Yeah.
It was scary too because I couldn't go back to sleep, and then it was like kind of frozen in place because I was like, I don't know. And then I just threw the covers over my head and went back to sleep. But if anybody picks up on any vibes on anything that's happening in my house, send me a private message. Don't put it on the page, put private, and we'll kibitz about it.
Yeah. We should do a Facebook Live investigation of your house.
Let's do it. We did before. We investigated. Remember Josh came over?
Yeah.
Weird stuff.
Be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have to clean my house out.
Yeah, I did that today. So, as the listener can tell, we really don't have anything for the show tonight because our guest unfortunately had to cancel.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, what are we going to talk about? So let's talk. We were going to talk about aliens. So why don't we talk a little bit about aliens? Get the show like jump started, so that when we record with her this week, we can continue on with the alien theme of the show.
For sure. All right. Well, I started doing some research this week, and I was trying to figure out how many types of aliens there were and what the different types were. So what I found, generally speaking, from my research, is that it varies between 36 and 42 different specifically identified types of alien species are out there. If anybody has any other info on that, let me know. But I thought it was really interesting because of the 100 billion star systems, now this is really hard to fathom, 100 billion star systems in the just in the Milky Way.
That's what I was going to say, just in our own galaxy.
Some of the experts say that the possibility should be about 2.8 billion civilizations within those 100 billion star systems, which seems like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're only seeing 36 to 40, or maybe, somewhere in that range, different types, where are the rest of them?
Yeah. I mean, it could be a thing where the planet isn't suitable for them to get off the planet, so that we would never find out. Or, there's several different reasons why they're not here. I mean, there's a thing called the Fermi paradox. Enrique Fermi was sitting at dinner one night, and he just blurted out, "Where are they?" And everybody's like, "Who?" He says, "The aliens. Where are the aliens at?" And he said the same thing with the speed that we could travel at when he was at dinner, and the age of the universe. He says there should be aliens everywhere. So he went and looked at different reasons why they're probably not here. And there could be things like, it could be a water planet where they're all fish or something like that. It could be where they're not advanced that far enough yet. Or the planet that they live on has too much gravity and they can't get off their planet. They may not send out like radio waves. They may be broadcasting their TV and all that stuff, but the radio waves haven't made it to us yet, because we've been putting out radio waves and TV signals for years, but honestly, it hasn't really been that long. And if you go up and look at a map of
how long we've been here.
If you look at a map of our solar system, and then there's actually a map that you can look up to show you how far our radio waves have traveled, it's not that big. So we just may not know or not communicate with them yet. Another thing you want to think about too is, do we want to communicate with them? Right. Do we want them to know that we're here? Because we don't know what their intentions are. Now, I've always said that, when aliens fly past Earth, they lock their doors, because we always say, well, what if they're a violent race? Well, we're very violent. We're the violent race. Right. So there's so many different things that could be the reason why either they haven't been here, or maybe they have, and they just never came back.
I was looking at something of what they call the Goldilocks zone, which is basically the zones within these star systems that the possibility of being an habitable environment. Now, it says that most of these have this potential, so it's very likely that, of all of these 100 billion star systems, and then the billions and billions of planets that would be in those, majority of them would be in that zone that is basically not too hot, not too cold, but just right for the environment, like our
Yeah.
system is. Earth's the only planet
Yeah.
that we can inhabit. And my parakeets
That we know
chirping,
of
so.
now. I mean,
Right.
how do we know that? How do we know that Mars wasn't like that 1 million or 2 million years ago? How do we know that Mars wasn't in our habitable zone back then?
Yeah, and I was thinking about it. It's like absolutely could have been, right? It could have been closer or further from the sun. But look at like with the dinosaurs. 4.5 billion years ago, our Earth was started, and I'm not sure how long ago the dinosaurs roamed, but now they're all gone. And
Yeah.
it's like our species had started over. So who's to say that some of these planets that have life on other planets are just maybe in that type of cycle in their development, where maybe they just
Yeah.
have dinosaurs in 100 million years or a
That's what I
million
mean.
years.
Yeah.
They would have, 2 podcasters sitting in separate houses because of snowstorms.
Yeah. Well,
and I'm in my pajamas dance. I just want to let you know.
I firmly believe, by looking at the evidence that we have, like the pyramids and the Sphinx and all that stuff,
Mhm.
that we were more advanced back then than we are now. Because,
sure.
I mean, look at the polygonal masonry. That's the walls that have all different shapes, but yet they merge so perfectly, and they look like the rock has been melted.
Right.
It's just like when we talk about Mars. Now, I believe that Mars had life on it, and there was civilizations on there just like Earth right now, to where they're building buildings and all that stuff, because they're finding structures on Mars that they're not talking about. I mean, we're talking about the face of Mars. There's monoliths that are like 3 miles tall, stuff like that. And they're also finding that the Xeon 125, which can only be made in nuclear explosions, is they find that in the atmosphere of Mars. And there's also 3 hotspots which are still radioactive. So how do we know that something didn't happen and it wiped out the race, and then as time goes by, everything is going to disappear? The only thing that's going to be left is rock. So,
sure, and it could have been 5 million years ago. It could have been orbiting where Earth is orbiting, and it was close to the sun, had all of that, and then maybe something happened that it pushed it back out in the
or the sun was hotter. But I mean, we could, if
traveling around the sun,
if we could colonize Mars, it is technically still in the habitable zone. I mean, it's still a little colder, but we don't know what it was millions of years ago. Sure. And it's weird because I had a dream, and in my dream I thought about something. What if something happened, not nuclear explosion or nothing like that, but I was listening to Mysterious Universe, and they were talking about how people are saying that the overpopulation and all that. Well, they're finding that population is actually shrinking. And there was a lady talking that in a few years, I don't know how many years, but we're going to have a lot less people on Earth. Well, what happened if all the living things died? Like there was people dying off, and then all of a sudden you had like 5 people left and they died. Well, the Earth would basically burn up, because you would have the machinery would still go, but like nuclear plants and all that would actually melt down and maybe would start fires. And then who knows, the Earth might turn so burnt and molten that it looks like it did, that we think it looked like way before the dinosaurs, where it was all burning at the same time. So how do we know it's not a big cycle where some life forms evolve on Earth, and then something happens and they die, and the Earth like turns back to molten or whatever and starts all over again?
It could. I mean, look at when you have a volcanic eruption, eventually things start to grow out of that. And it's basically, glass rock. There's nothing to sustain it, yet things start to grow out of that. They've seen, seen plants and trees start to develop out of it.
Life finds a way.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're talking about the habitable zones, and that's just what we consider life. Now, way down on the bottom of the ocean, where the pressure is so high, nothing can live. The pressure is so intense. There's no light. So there's no light from the sun. There's extreme pressure. And then by these vents from volcanoes, there's this hot water coming out that's thousands of degrees. So nothing could live there. But yet when they went down there, they found out that there was more life around those vents than there is humans. There's so many different types of different worms and crabs and all that stuff. So there could be life on other planets that are too hot for humans or too sulfuric for humans, but yet the people that, or the beings or people that live there are fine.
I think you adapt. It's like you living in Florida versus living up north. Your blood changes, it thins out. You adapt to the environment. So that's very easy. I mean, look at the grays. Look how giant their eyes are, because they're probably coming from a dark environment, a nocturnal environment, and then come here and they're like, "Where's my sunglasses?
Yeah,
I need my Gucci sunglasses."
That's why they blink so much. But now here's a thought. How do we know that the grays and the tall grays are not humans from 1 million years from now? Because we're starting to go out on other planets. Let's say we end up colonizing other planets, or even just go out into space and live in space for 1,000 years or more. We'll evolve to that, where we don't need these heavy bodies because it's less gravity. Your arms are going to get thinner. I mean, it's a proven fact that the astronauts on the space station have to exercise for hours a day just to keep their muscles up. So let's imagine if you're living up in space. It's dark, so your eyes have to get bigger. You don't need your muscles because you're weightless. Maybe you don't have to eat as much, so that your mouth gets smaller. So we're describing the grays. So how do we know that these aliens that are coming back are not future time traveling tourists coming back and seeing what the Earth looked like 1 million years ago? I mean, if we could go back and look at the dinosaurs, I know a lot of people would. So
for sure.
That's a theory too, is what if the grays are actually time traveling from the future and they just look different?
I just thought of something, like when people get very ill, their skin turns a color gray.
Yeah.
So
because it's just like when you get jaundice and all that. Granted, that's because of the kidneys, but if you are in an environment, like let's say you live in a cave and generationally your family always lives in those caves, your skin's going to turn gray. And that's what the grays are, or even the tall grays, which are more of a white, well, even the Nordics. Yeah.
Well, this is interesting. I found some facts about aliens that I thought I'd share with everybody. And, these are just like kind of general facts, but I thought they were really interesting. So it says that more than 20,000 people in the world have purchased alien abduction insurance, which I didn't even know this existed.
Oh, really?
Now,
I didn't know. I'm going to check with my insurance guy.
I think we should get some. If the insured person is kidnapped by an alien, the insurance company is willing to pay back $1 million annually for 1 million years. So,
Oh,
so if you insure yourself against being abducted by aliens, you're not exposed to aliens something. Um, do not get pregnant or not killed by aliens. So how do you prove that to your insurance company? So I don't think State Farm is really up to date with that on
I'm
their
going to have to check with my
deductible.
State Farm insurance person.
Yeah, I should. That is
And I know
interesting.
you
Okay.
sent me the same link, and if you notice below that, oh, it's not
Uh-huh.
popping up. On my screen, there's an ad for Safe Auto Insurance.
Oh, no, mine's hair care stuff.
Oh, okay.
Um, this one's interesting. It says that some firefighters in the United States are training how to face aliens and how to deal with alien invasion and destruction. And at the same time, they're also learning how to help injured aliens. So it would be really interesting to find out what departments and what areas in the United States this is happening.
Yeah, and okay, let's
Arizona?
take that.
Right.
Let's take that for example. How do they know how to treat aliens if they don't have bodies to know what they actually look like and how where their organs are and all that?
Right.
So, did we do an alien autopsy? Do you remember that show back in the 90s? Alien autopsy, you know? And well, now how do we know that they didn't do an autopsy so that they know how to treat them?
I was listening to this one article or video that was saying that in Area 51 that they have a living alien in there, and at one time one of the aliens had escaped, and this guy, and I don't know if he was FBI or what his ranking or title was, but it was his job to go and wrangle this thing back in. And he was saying that it drinks water, but it produces its own food. So basically, through like the stomach or maybe the private parts, it creates this like ball of like white ball of whatever it is, and then it eats it in its mouth, and that's its food. It doesn't have, it's like what would you call it?
Self-regenerating?
Yeah, which I thought was really,
That
really
is
interesting.
really
But
because
he said
how
there
would
were living aliens there, and ones that had deceased that they had autopsy.
yeah.
But that's one person's
I
opinion.
mean, if you think about it, if they drink water, they're taking substance in because you can't generate your own food if you don't take something into your body,
Right.
And as I'm sitting here, we have the palm trees in the studio here, and all I put in there is water, and they're growing.
Yeah.
They're taking whatever's in the water and changing it into themselves. So
Yeah.
it may seem like a far stretch to say that they create their own food, but plants do it all the time. They're just absorbing water
and sunlight and other
Mhm.
things. But I just thought that was really interesting. There's another fact that people think that aliens are watching us right now in galaxies 65 million light years away, and they will see a group of dinosaurs. However, in order to see dinosaurs, they need a huge telescope, right? So
Yeah.
what, you always think, what kind of technology do these creatures have
If
that
they're
we don't even know about, right?
yeah,
Like
if
we
they're
can
that
even
much
fathom.
advanced, I mean, the thing is, it takes time for light to travel to these long. So if they are watching us now from that far away, they are only seeing the dinosaurs and they have no clue that we've advanced to where we are.
Right.
So it goes back to the same thing as our radio waves. The planets are just picking up, our first broadcast. They probably think that's the way we are. And if they travel here, they're going to find out that we've advanced so far, but also they'll be advanced too, because if they're to where they can come to us, they got to be way farther advanced than we are, because we can't even, send a human to Mars yet.
Right. So Edgar Mitchell, the fourth person on the moon who claimed to be on the moon, he also claimed that the alien has contacted humans several times, but the government is covering up this fact. Now, I mean, this has been the longest debated thing since, first man and government started is, were there aliens here? Have they been contacted? Does the government hide these facts? A big thing right here in Ohio and Wright-Patterson.
Yeah.
Air Force Base is where they supposedly took the bodies of some of these creatures that crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the presidents came in and actually viewed it and then talked about it later. But, very classified documents.
Yeah.
And
the thing is, when those guys went to the moon, they had a separate channel. They had a medical channel that they would talk to, ground control about.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they kept saying is, there's Santa Claus, there's Santa Claus. They had a code word for alien, which was Santa Claus. And they said, there's another Santa Claus. And, I don't know how true it is, but I've seen lots of times where they said that the guys that went up on the moon said, oh my God, they're huge. They're on the side of that crater. They're watching us. And then when they came back and did the press conference, you would think, if you watch that press conference, you would think that they'd be high-fiving and all happy and all that, but they looked like they were like their puppies were kicked or something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They were not happy. They just sat there all somber. And they just came back from the moon. So you would think that being the first people to walk on the moon, they would have been so happy and, yeah, look what we did, all that. But no, they were all like just sitting there like their whole world has changed. And they found out something that completely changed their whole thought of, what life is about.
Sure.
So did they see aliens on the moon? We don't know. But a lot of talk, it says that they did.
Yeah, many of the first people that were on the moon are out in space. Now they're in their 80s and 90s, and some of them are past, but they all are saying that they saw these things.
And the thing is, they're to the point where, they don't care if they talk, because what's the government going to do to them now?
Right. Right.
And there was a situation too where the Russian cosmonauts were up, and this happened to several of them, where they heard someone knocking on the side of their ship.
Oh my gosh.
And they put it off as there was something loose on the ship and all that, but all of them said there was knocking on the side, like someone was banging on the door trying to get in.
That's funny, because the same thing happened to me today. I was sitting in the parking lot at my work eating my chicken sandwich from McDonald's and French fries. And I kept hearing this bang, 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 bang. It was squirrels were on top of my car because they kept French fries. And this isn't the first time it happened. And I'm like, oh my God, alien invasion. Nope, just squirrels.
Just
so
squirrels.
Anyway, okay, let me give you some more facts here.
All
right. It says we have an extraordinarily 2% chance of discovering extraterrestrial life in the next decade, which is 10 years. Scientists from the University of East Anglia in the UK are studying the probability of existence of intelligent life on other planets. So 2% is pretty big in 10 years. I mean, for the grand scope of like the Earth being 4.5 billion, years old, that's pretty high.
Yeah. And back in 90, or I think it was 84, we discovered our first exoplanet. We found the first planet that was around another star. And since then, like you said in the beginning of the show, they found that almost every single star out there has at least one or two planets around it, at least one or two.
Mm-hmm.
Not, it could have more.
Right.
and Proxima Centauri B, which is only 4 light years away, it's looking like there's life on that planet. And being only 4 light years away, of course, it would take, like, at the current speed we have now, it'd take like 70,000 years or something to get there. But if there is life on that planet, they're picking up our radio signals from 4 years ago. So think about what happened, in the news 4 years ago. That's what they're seeing.
It's interesting. Let's see. Here's another one. The president of the World Chess Federation believes that chess is invented by aliens.
No.
Dr. Ilyu Navikov, I think is how you say it, from the Republic of Kalmykia, has claimed to have been abducted by aliens wearing yellow spacesuits on the evening of September 17th, 1997.
Huh.
Yellow suits. Interesting. Mm-hmm. In 3 days of the Apollo 11's mission, the crew had reported that they were located not far from a strange flying object. They think it was a separate SIV-B rocket, but NASA can't explain what it was.
Yeah, and they keep track of everything. I mean, there's military bases dedicated to tracking every single piece of space debris up there.
Wow.
And
that's interesting.
We don't have the time to talk about it now, but I want to do a show about the Black Knight.
What's that?
It's a satellite that's up there. It's called the Black Knight. And it's supposedly a piece of heat shield blanket that came off one of the spaceships.
Uh-huh.
But this Black Knight, and I guess we'll talk about it now, but this Black Knight has been talked about since the 1800s. And in the 1600s, I believe it was, don't quote me on this, but Copernicus, maybe?
Okay.
Back in the 15 or 1600s, talked about a black object that he saw up in space somehow. I don't know. So it might have to be after the invention of the telescope. But there's been reported sightings of the Black Knight going way back. I want to say to the 1800s, but there could have been sightings for it before that too. And we really don't know what the Black Knight is. So I'll put a show together and we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about Oumuamua and other things like that. But, if the government has an agency that monitors every single piece of debris that's up there, how can they explain that they don't understand what this piece that they believe is part of the stage B of the rocket, which is the second stage? They keep track of all that stuff. So, to say that they don't know is really compelling.
So I saw something really interesting the other day. There's a famous pop singer who's, in this time right now.
Beatles?
No, her name is Camila Cabello or something like that.
Okay.
Well, anyway, she was on vacation with her family, and she was filming them against the backdrop of like this mountainous area. And she filmed this like round ball flying super fast over her family's head, and then a fighter jet following it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And she showed it on the Tonight Show. So if any guys want to go out and just try to Google that, it was really interesting. Like, she's like, I can't explain it. Everybody in the audience, they weren't like, oh, they were like, oh. So you have to check it out.
That would be interesting.
If I find it, I'll put it on our page.
All right.
Let's see. Oh, we kind of talked about this. Astronomers Margaret Turnbull and Jill Tarter from the Carnegie Institute of the United States has list of 17 stars in the United States, I think it meant in the Milky Way.
Yeah.
That included 1,000 or 17,129 planets that were closest to the sun, that were likely to have life that could breed a complex life. They also claim that the planets have at least 3 billion years of evolutionary history of intelligent life.
Yeah.
Now, very interesting.
We look at our lives and our planet, and it's relatively young compared to a lot of the planets and even the galaxies that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the new James Webb Telescope has found galaxies that they say are billions and billions and billions, like 100 billion years old, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how they can figure that out, but stuff's been around for a lot longer than what we think.
Yeah. Now, in 1960, there was an astronomer named Frank Drake. He attempted the first contact with aliens. Now, he did an experiment where he used an 85-foot radio antenna to capture signals from 2 nearby stars that were like the sun.
Yeah.
And that's interesting.
Yeah, he came up with the Drake equation, which is N equals R star, FP, NE, FI, FI, or
FE.
FL, FI, FEC, and then L. And it's
Right.
basically a formula saying that if all these things can happen, that it proves life. But it has to have all these different things that work together to equal life. And it's the N stands for the number of civilizations which humans contact or can be contacted.
Mm-hmm.
The R means the rate of star transformation. The FP is the fraction of stars that have planets around them. The NE means the number of planets that could support life around that star. The FL is the fraction of life-supporting planets. So this basically goes back to saying the same thing that we talked about earlier, is how many planets are out there that can have upright standing humans that can build things like spaceships or radios and all that, and then communicate or fly off their planet. But there's so many different variables to this where, like we said, it could be a planet of water. It could be a planet where it's too much gravity. It could be a planet of humanoid people that don't care to look at, to explore.
Right.
So they never try.
Yeah. Maybe they have no concept of flying or flight or religion or spirituality or paranormal or anything.
I mean, if you think about it, we look at the cavemen of being that way, where they just exist. But, doing a lot of research, we found out that the cavemen are a lot smarter than what we talked about. But who knows? It could be a planet of humanoid people that just go about their lives and don't care.
Yeah.
A planet full of badgers.
A planet full of sloths, giant sloths.
Honey badger don't care. What is that?
Yeah, honey badger don't care. Oh my God, that's so funny. So this, Joe and I talk about this all the time. Some studies suggest that aliens have visited ancient Egypt, and ancient Egyptians and were taught the ancient Egyptians some scientific knowledge. So some of the symbology that's in some of the hieroglyphs look like spaceships. Some look like aliens. There's like hybrid looking type things in there. Joe has done a lot of research on, cave drawings and, all the different civilizations all have some form of alien looking craft or something that would be way more advanced, I guess you would say, like machinery type things that shouldn't have existed, 1,000 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, just the the cave drawings, or even in Egypt, the hieroglyphs that show beings that look like your standard gray aliens, the same shape, the same eyes, everything.
Yeah.
And that's where it makes me think to the fact, well, are they time traveling tourism? Because they're going back to Egypt, and Egypt saw the same thing that we're seeing now. So, granted, even the human race hasn't evolved to where we look different than what the Egyptians looked like. But, who's to say that they didn't see aliens that we're seeing now, and it's just a different time period. They picked the time to go back and see how the pyramids were built, and then they saw them, and then they drew them on their walls. Because you got to remember too, they considered beings that come from outer space gods, and they want to honor those gods, and that's been proven too. There's islands that during the war never saw planes before, and when they saw these planes land on their island, they actually went out, and after these soldiers left in these planes, the people that lived on those islands actually made planes out of wood and all that, and put them out there so that it would draw their gods, quote, quote, back to them, because they saw the planes and didn't know what they were. So they thought they were gods, and they made these effigies of planes to try to draw them back. So, I mean, how do we know that the Egyptians didn't do the same? I mean, I know they were smarter than that, but there's in Egypt, in Mexico, in Cuba, all these places, there's drawings that look like spacemen in spaceships with helmets, tubing, everything. Like, we've all seen the one from the Aztecs, where it looks like a guy sitting in a spaceship, laying in a chair with all the controls around him. And on the bottom is flames coming out and everything.
Yeah, that's very interesting. They said that, some of the earliest UFO sightings occurred in Egypt at 1450 BC. So we're talking like 3,000 years ago. It's unbelievable. So crazy. Go ahead.
It goes on too of the different time of year, or different years, I should say. They had different explanations of what they were, because you had the airship flap, and then you had the classic saucers, and then you had the cigar shaped, and then you had the triangles like we're seeing now. There's different, way back then, they, like in India, they call them, I think, the Ramada, I believe, which were cone-shaped spacecraft with propellers on them. And that's what they saw. And they said that these giant things would land with full of thunder and smoke, which would make sense if they were using propellant, like we do now.
Yeah, for sure. This is interesting. It says here that Napoleon claimed that he was abducted by aliens. In July of 1797 is when he claimed that he was kidnapped by aliens, and they found a foreign object embedded in his skull remains.
Oh.
Isn't that
so
crazy?
He had an implant.
Yeah. That's weird, because one time I thought I had one. I had been at the park when I was doing some martial arts training, and all of a sudden the back of my neck just started burning, and it felt like I had 2 ball bearings in the back of my neck, and they were there for like a year. But I think I got bit by a spider or something, because we were around lots of trees and stuff. But it was the weirdest thing, because it was like 2 bumps, and you could feel it right under my skin, and they were hard as a rock. It was so weird. And it itched.
Do you have any missing time, or anything like that would show that you were abducted?
No, I don't think so. Not at that time, but you never know. Would you remember if they wiped your memory?
No. Stare at this light.
Yeah. In 2003, there was a Harvard University study where there were 7 people who claimed to have been kidnapped. And they said that they were kidnapped by extraterrestrials for hygienic experiments and sexual tests. Now, it says in this book, it's called Kidnapping, why people believe they were hijacked by aliens. They tried to look at things from more of a scientific perspective. Now, there's so much scientific research and studies around aliens and alien disappearances. I mean, one of the most famous case, which Joe and I did another show on, the Betty and Barney abduction case. Excuse me. Need some water. So I don't know. Have you heard any recent stories about anybody being abducted lately? Is like that fad over?
I don't know. That's the thing. I haven't heard of any. Maybe we were going to have Sarah on and talk about her season of aliens. Maybe she knows about some, but I haven't heard of any.
Well, I have 5 quick signs that you could use to tell if you've been abducted by aliens.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is lost time, which you mentioned earlier. So, you have this phenomenon where you maybe hear one time and gone another, or remember the case where, Joe, you said you found there was a guy who went missing and then he came back and it was like his feet were almost worn down to the bone.
Yeah.
Like
that
he
was
had
a
been
missing
gone.
411 story.
Oh, okay.
Where he disappeared on a trail and he literally disappeared, and they searched for him, couldn't find him. And they found him, I believe it was a day later or later on that night in one of the locations where they searched over and over. And his feet were wore down so far to the bone, it was like he was walking on coral for a month. That's what they said.
Wow. That's interesting. Another way you may have been abducted would be sleep paralysis. Often people are claimed that they are woken in the middle of the night and found themselves to be paralyzed. They saw non-human beings around them, whether they were at home or maybe somewhere else, and then they, feel like they were transported, and then they end up in the same spot, which is really, really weird. Another is unexplained pains or strange scratches on the body. Sometimes there's also implants. People claim that they have found things under their skin and they dig it out themselves sometimes and find pieces of metal or strange chips or whatever it is. And then the last one would be have a very strong urge to know about extraterrestrials or UFOs or something along that lines. All of a sudden you're just drawn to it. You might be having nightmares or strange flashbacks too. Some of the abductees claim that they have flashbacks. And didn't you say something, Joe, about it kind of running in families?
Yeah. The people that have been abducted have found out that their parents have been abducted, their grandparents have been abducted. So it's almost like they're coming back and checking out their experiments.
That's interesting.
Coming back to the same family. I've heard of situations where people woke up with the wrong clothing on, clothing on backwards, kids waking up and having their pajamas on backwards, or some other pair that they don't even own. Like the aliens take all these abductees, put them in a room, take their clothes off, and they forget which one had what clothing on. And people have woken up and noticed that they're wearing clothes that they don't even own.
Yeah, it's so
that
scary.
would be bizarre.
And
I've heard of people dreaming creatures, or even little monkeys or stuff like come in the room and take them out the wall. They don't even take them out windows, that they go through walls. And one of the stories I've heard, there was a kid that kept talking about the monkeys that come into his room and dance and play with him. Okay. And it's sort of like, I know this is a really heart-gun, or how do you say it, a negative story, but it kind of explains it. There was a kid that kept saying that a clown was coming into his room and dancing and touching him inappropriately. Okay. And it was so bizarre that nobody believed what he was saying. He's like, wait a minute. A clown comes in your room, plays in a Led Zeppelin song or something and dances, and nobody believed him because it was so far-fetched. Well, there's stories of these kids saying that there's monkeys coming in the room, or orange tigers or whatever, and they're dancing upright. Well, this person that was talking about how this clown kept coming in his room and playing with him, later on, they were cleaning the house out and found a box with a costume in it and a cassette player that had the same music they talked about. Here, come to find out, it was the stepfather abusing the kid, but he was doing it in such a way that it was so far-fetched that nobody would believe him. That They said, oh, you're just making this up. So that relates to the fact that there's people that are claiming to see weird things coming into their bedrooms at the middle of the night and abducting them. And people say that's impossible. A 4-foot purple gorilla or Barney comes in your room and abducts you. You're making this up. And maybe it's a fact where they're putting that image into their mind so that they don't see their true form of grays or whatever. So who knows? I mean, we don't know this stuff. And the more we look into it, the more we learn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, you could go down 50 different rabbit holes and talk about so many different, various things about aliens, alien abduction, life on other planets. I mean, it could go on and on. But our time here is running short.
Yes. And
so everybody,
we apologize for not having Sarah on, but she had some issues where she couldn't get online. And I don't know if the power went out because we have the snowstorm going on.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe she was abducted.
Let me give the listeners a little look at the spooky kitchen where Joe and I saw a black shadow figure. But I'll just keep it that way for a little bit. I always say goodbye. But just everybody, thank you for joining us. If you have had some type of encounter and you would like to talk about it on the show, you can always come on anonymously or send us a DM with your story. We'll read it on air. We'll keep it anonymous, though. Of course, like and subscribe our YouTube channel, our Facebook page. Share the show with all your friends. We put this out for free for you guys if you want to support the channel.
Click the link below for Joe's book, The 14-Day Morning Affirmation Transformation. This book will change your life. Also, Jen's Poshmark Closet, which, being live on here, maybe you should take the viewer down to the dungeon to see all your piles of clothes.
It's so messy.
Piles.
Oh gosh, maybe another time. But we'll do a little tour of a spooky house.
Yeah.
Spooky.
Jen goes to so many places and sources really good clothing and finds them at such good deals that she passes the deals on to you. And the link is in the description. Yeah. Every show has that link. So you can go to Jen's Closet and buy some clothing.
All right,
And
everybody.
other than
Have a
that-
great week. Don't forget your super siblings, Jen and Joe. We're here every week with the new
We're here
show
every
for
week.
you.
If you're having a convention and you want us to speak at your convention, we're available for that.
Absolutely.
If you have another show and you would like us on your show, get a hold of us. We will come on your show and be
Yeah.
spectacular. We will be so much fun. And we'll bring a lot of great information to your listeners.
For sure.
So, other than that, Jen, go
Joe?
shovel the driveway.
I already did.
Oh. And let's leave with some writing on the wall from 60 Second Crush. Have a great week. Nothing. Writing on the wall is
Bye,
from
everybody.
Dead and Five, right?
Nope. 60 Second Crush.
Okay. Don't confuse me. I'm old.
Sorry.
Don't confuse me.
Sorry.
All right, folks.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in this week. Have a great week. Next week, hopefully, we will have Sarah on and we'll talk about her show that she has coming up, her season of alien shows.
All right.
And it'll be
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
See ya.